Hi, Paul. So we are with Paul Sumners. I'm not going to lie to you. This is the second time that we've tried to do this. My mistake, technology-wise, not the greatest. And we had a bit of a mishap with trying to record this conversation yesterday. But as we are now, we think we've got this right this time. And we are catching up with Paul to discuss a little bit more detail on the pathophysiology, the physiology of the virus that is currently creating this pandemic around the world. Paul has a PhD in physiology and a very keen interest in all things biology based, particularly in human biology.
Yes.
And he is going to share his wisdom on what is potentially going on, and more importantly, what we could all do to help fight this virus, but then also make positive lifestyle changes to prevent further episodes affecting us. So, Paul, over to you. Thank you for joining us. Tell us a little bit more about yourself.
So I am a kind of career academic physiologist. Until 2014, I had spent all my time working in universities, mostly in and around London. And I kind of straddled the border between human physiology and biotechnology. So I was very interested in engineering and trying to find product solutions to physiological problems. So, you know, things that enhance breathing or enhance oxygenation in the lungs, things that you can put your feet on to stimulate circulation, you know, solving problems in terms of you know, venous insufficiency and you know, people getting limbs amputated and those kinds of problems. So I was always kind of interested in this border between human biology and how we can use technology to positively impact biology.
So very, very apt given the nature of this virus by you know, the fact of how it's impacting the body from what we hear. How would you, you know, going straight into the idea of talking around this particular viral strain, where do you see its impact on the body from what you've read so far? What's your take on it?
Well, I mean, it's mostly lung, so it's using spike proteins to get access to the body through lung tissue, and from there it's damaging hemoglobin, it's damaging ion transport and ion binding, it's disabling our ability to carry oxygen.
Sorry, just so the spike proteins, to just describe that for.
Yeah, so you might see in the news that there's the ACE receptors, the ACE2 receptors in the lung tissue. They're very densely populated in the lung tissue, and the virus uses a protein to attach to those receptors.
So that then creates a block.
Use like a lock and key, you know.
Yes, okay.
So they use a spike protein to access through that receptor and get inside the body, and that's when they start cascading their damage. Right.
So that effectively blocks the oxygen transferring.
So once they're inside the body, then they damage heme, you know, iron-containing molecules. They damage. So the heme, they break the surface of the hemoglobin, and they leave this free hemoglobin, which has no oxygen carrying capacity, and is basically just floating around the blood, not serving any purpose other than stimulating the immune system.
So whereas before in the healthy individual, that is going to be transporting the oxygen around the body, suddenly it's transporting nothing. It's just traveling around, but there's no oxygen within it. And
and it's fascinating, Rob, that, you know, some artificial intelligence works come out of Wuhan, because obviously they're you know, at the centre of the storm really, and what they've found is that total hemoglobin was one of the three. There was three kind of risk factors for people who are probably going to need ventilation and are going to struggle the most.
Right.
One of those factors was total hemoglobin. So as the virus damages the heme that's there, the body has to try and produce more. So you get a total hemoglobin goes right up, and that is one of the kind of big risk factors, suggesting that they just can't, the patients who do worse can't carry oxygen.
Okay, so potentially those people that have difficulty creating more hemoglobin in general, Is that what you're saying?
No, I don't think it's a difficulty creating more hemoglobin. I mean, it could be, but the problem is that the hemoglobin in there is deactivated. So the body's got to try and recover that oxygen carrying capacity. So what you get is you get an increase in the total hemoglobin in the blood, but maybe 70% of that is deactivated, is broken.
Okay. So so it becomes more redundant in its process.
Yeah.
So and you mentioned there obviously the artificial intelligence that has been coming out of Wuhan, and as you rightly say, that's at the centre of the storm. Media have kind of suggested that it is coming from the Wuhan wet market in particular. What's your thoughts on that? Do you think that is actually accurate? Do you think that that's where this virus has started? I know that's a difficult thing to.
Yeah, I think I mean I've seen some better evidence. The better evidence that I've seen suggests it's more to do with potential biotechnology labs over there, and also maybe factory farming, more related to factory farming.
Factory farming as in pharmaceuticals or?
No, farming animals, but in a really kind of intensive way. So not having animals out in the fields, eating what they're supposed to be eating, but having them in, in kind of these really dirty, kind of compact places, and the animals aren't living naturally at all. Yeah. So the problem with the Wuhan, the wet market idea is that the bats that they're talking about, they're not in the market. The bats where these strains are active, or where these strains are coming from, I can't remember the name of bat off the top of my head, but they're not in the Wuhan market, but they are studied extensively in the biotech labs.
Okay, interesting. Okay.
So doubtful that it's from the wet market.
And presumably as well, given the taboo nature of the wet market culture, I mean, it's bound to be something that attracts attention, isn't it, when they're trying to point the finger of blame as to where this has come from. Okay, interesting. So possibly more from factory farming, very, very dense locations, several animals. And then presumably, just like the wet markets, as with factory farming now, this has been going on for years. It's been going on for decades, this whole production process of farming. So the creation, the advent of these viruses has also then been around for quite some time. So why now? How would you explain the rate at which this is spread, and perhaps the intensity of the virus? Is it that the viral strains are becoming more and more potent, that we're becoming more susceptible?
Yeah, I mean, it could be either of those things, really, Rob. It's I mean, we don't know enough about the virus yet. Every day brings more data, and we won't be able to really, to draw any useful conclusions about this really until all the data's in, and that's at the end when this is all finished, and we know how many people were infected, we know how many people have died, we know, similar with SARS and MERS, we know a lot about those viruses now, and it'll be the same with this. That it's really difficult to draw any conclusions in the middle of the storm. It's you've got to collect all the data and then reflect back on it, and that's how you learn about something. So I would hate to be the government in this kind of situation. When you look at Korea and China, Korea especially were prepped for this. The SARS and MERS and those kind of processes they went through in a big way. They didn't. My life wasn't affected. I was living in London. I wasn't affected at all from that. So we just were not prepared in a way that the Koreans were, and the Koreans are under 200 deaths. And their economy's starting to get back to normal now.
Rapid testing,
testing, use of mobile phones to tag where people have been and who they've been in contact with.
Yeah, clever.
I mean, unless you've been having an affair and then it's been catching all sorts of people out.
Also clever,
So, but so the way they've used technology and the way they've Koreans generally are a mask-wearing culture. There's something, when I lived over there was something called the yellow wind from China, and so during that time you have to wear a mask or you get in.
It's compulsory.
it's not compulsory, but you can't really breathe well without it.
Wow. Okay.
It's a bit kind of the London Tube type phenomenon that if you're on there all day long, you get kind of blackened mucus. You're coughing up blackened mucus.
Goodness. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, they were just ready. They were just ready in a way that we just weren't.
And going on the on the premise that we think that the virus has come from these markets and farming situations, okay, this mass farming. The reality, therefore, is that this won't be the last. Okay, there's going to be more that come from those settings, because they're not going to be able to just suddenly stop doing that. Yeah. So I think really, and the purpose of the chat is to help other people understand how they can better, as we said at the start, prevent them from perhaps contracting the virus, or at least if they do contract the virus, as they do with the common cold and other things like common flu, how can we optimize our health in order to be able to fight this better?
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point, Rob, that living in cities, living with all the technology that we've got now, there's nothing that we do that doesn't affect the systems of the body. And I think the immune system is always kind of the first to react.
Right.
And so I'm kind of advising people, and I've been advising people for a long time, that there are things you can do. Turn Wi-Fi off at night.
Okay.
Wi-Fi it does affect the immune system. We know it does. We know that microwave radiation affects the immune system. The levels that we are exposed to are very low, but we're exposed to them chronically over a long time.
Yeah, good point.
So just getting 8 or 10 hours a night when there's no Wi-Fi on is can be really helpful.
So literally switching your router off as you go to bed.
Exactly.
So how does that fit in with, as a topic of conversation, the potential that the 5G network rolling out is having an impact as well? How would that fit into this?
Well, we know radiation can cause what's called double strand breaks in DNA.
Right.
So you get kind of this chunk of DNA that's kicked out into the cell environment, and normally that will be recycled by the immune system and kind of regenerated into new tissue.
Okay.
So there is some ideas that could be the seed of a virus.
Right.
And it's happening on such a constant, it's happening all the time in trillions of cells in the body, that statistically it's probably quite likely that can be the seed of a virus.
Okay. So just to try and get some clarity on this then, Paul. So you're saying that the radio waves have the ability to break down the DNA.
Yes.
And potentially that broken part of the DNA can become a carrier for the virus.
A seed for a virus. It can.
Right.
Genetic material can become part of that virus, part of a virus.
Right.
That's an idea. It's an idea at the moment, but this kind of work's ongoing. But I think we're on far safer ground, Rob, to talk about how kind of technology, and not just radiation, but blue light. Artificial light, blue light. From artificial sources. I mean, we're sat on a computer here, and screens are made to give out a lot of blue light because they're very clear. Blue light's very clear. We see a lot better in blue. We see a lot better in the middle of the day when there's blue light outside. The sky's blue, you will get a lot of blue light.
Okay.
We do at dusk or dawn or dusk when the light's more of a red shift. We don't see it well in those times. So I mean, that probably hints at the kind of light environment that we should be exposed to. We should be seeing sunrise. We should be having bright blue in the middle of the day, and then we should be seeing sunsets.
Right.
And then when you think, well, how is that working? Well, that links into the circadian rhythms and the clocks of the body, the central clock in the brain, but clocks in every cell of our tissue.
Yeah.
And kind of aligning those clocks and getting those clocks working really well, is one of the main kind of elements that will boost immune function.
So you mentioned there about the circadian clocks and circadian rhythms. So just for those people that may not be aware of that, how it functions and what it's all about, can you give a brief description of that? How that?
Yeah. So in this kind of deep centers of our brain, we've got something called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, and that's the body's master clock. right? And that's linked to the pineal gland that releases melatonin, and it's linked to the HP axis, the hypothalamic adrenal kind of axis. So all that controls all of our hormone release. It controls, it stimulates proteins. So the only job of DNA is to replicate proteins, whether that be muscle tissue, whether that be enzymes, whether that be hormones. They're all proteins, and having those proteins produced at the right time in the right place determines whether we're healthy or whether we're sick.
Right.
Now, as soon as you start to kind of, so as an example, if you start using a lot of blue light technology late in the evening, your brain never gets the idea that it's nighttime.
Okay.
So it tries to keep those circuits switched on, producing different proteins, maybe cortisol instead of melatonin.
Right.
You get a shift in the hormone profiles, you get a shift in enzymes, you get a shift in metabolism, you get shifts in all these things that actually is merely because we're disconnected from the environment, from our natural environment.
So basically a disruption to it all, as you say.
All disrupted, yeah.
So would I be right then to suggest that what you're describing, this Arcadian main computer, okay, is creating all the processes in response to the stimulus? So our stimulus, our five senses are fueling this computer to set about the functions in the body.
Yes.
And just like with any working machine, any working part, some downtime to repair, some downtime to recover, to get restocked of all the hormones is crucial.
Absolutely.
And therefore, potentially, if we're constantly stimulating ourselves, particularly with blue lights, as you say, using technology, we're not really giving that circadian computer the time to rebalance, and it's continually keeping us going.
Exactly.
Which makes us more vulnerable and reduces our immune system's capability.
And there's what we're talking about here, Rob, is not speculative. This is like, we know for a fact that damaging circadian clocks wrecks our immune system.
Okay.
Massively weakens our immune system. Yeah. And that's fundamentally the problem we're dealing with responses to things like COVID, is that the body just needs time for the immune system to develop the antibodies to beat this virus. And if because our systems aren't working, we're not getting that time, then we're going into multiple organ failure and dying. We're losing oxygen, there's more cytokines going on. I've heard the term cytokine storms. So we just...
I haven't heard that term.
Yeah, right. We're just getting
that's
this...
on your radar.
Yeah, this massive kind of overproduction of cytokines, which are kind of immune stimulating molecules, stimulate macrophages and neutrophils and all the
all
little...
your inflammation, right? So
exactly, yeah. And
so this is what you say there with the systems, you know, they're, like we said earlier, they're constantly working because of the stimulus. And if they're, as a response to what they're being stimulated, if they're continually releasing these cytokines when they actually need to in response to a virus, they're depleted, or they just don't have the strength. Is that the best way to look at it?
Another kind of interesting take that I've come across recently is ascorbic acid, so vitamin C, but as ascorbic acid. How that's involved in the process. One of, we've known for a long time that intravenous vitamin C is very beneficial in cancer. Yeah. And it's vitamin C is thought of as an antioxidant, right? So it sweeps up free radicals.
Okay.
But when you give very high doses intravenously, it works as a pro-oxidant, so it creates free radicals.
Right.
And what that does, in cells that are rapidly dividing, like cancer cells or like viral cells, you create this kind of free radical burst, which causes the cell to kind of self-destruct.
Okay.
Now, if you run out of ascorbic acid, because ascorbic acid is involved cyclically in this kind of, in the macrophage and neutrophil process of immune function, if you run out of ascorbic acid, then you can't produce those free radical kind of bursts that destroy tissue. Right. And then built into that as well, certainly in macrophages, there's this kind of feedback loop. So the macrophage produces this free radical burst that kills something called monocytes that actually lead to the production of macrophages.
Right.
So it's nice
So you're
feedback.
breaking the cycle.
So you're breaking the cycle. So once you have this huge burst of macrophage activity, then all the monocytes are destroyed. So that then it just naturally calms down on its own. If we're running out of ascorbic acid, we can't kind of regulate that system very well.
Okay, so that's a bit like the fuel to the service.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and the macrophage, just to explain that.
So
what do you mean by that?
Is one of the kind of little soldier cells of the immune system that comes in and eats and destroys and recycles any pathogen it finds.
So your ascorbic acid is increasing the quantity or the strength of those?
It's not. It's the macrophage. It's involved. The macrophage is using ascorbic acid in the physical process.
Sorry. Yes. Yeah. So you need
to actually release. Yeah. To actually. That's one of the mechanisms. This increasing free radicals is one of the mechanisms it uses to kill a pathogen, but it's also the mechanism it uses to feed back to stop the production of more macrophages.
Okay. Interesting. So to help with that immune response with something like a virus, like COVID-19 and anything else that might come through to the system, there's benefit in significantly increasing the amount of ascorbic acid.
Absolutely.
And okay, so with that and how that fits in with that circadian clock and circadian rhythm, you mentioned about light exposure, reduction presumably of technological exposure of blue light. Any other things that we can perhaps consider doing lifestyle wise that would also further help?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, really simple things, Robin. All three is go out and see the morning sun. So I tell friends and family, everyone I talk to is go out and see sunrise as close to sunrise as you can, 7 or 8 o'clock, with your naked eyes, no sunglasses.
Okay. Again, for the stimulant point of view,
sunglasses are blocking UV. They're changing the light color. They're allowing more blue through and less of the colors that kind of make us squint. And they do reduce the intensity of the blue, but they do shift it more to a blue shifted light.
Oh, okay. So sunglasses at that time of the day are actually going to be a bad thing.
Have you ever seen a Maasai wearing sunglasses?
No, I can't say I have.
Right, because they don't. Because they don't.
Yeah.
Once they've become westernized and they're moving to cities, okay, they might do. But Maasai living on the plains do not wear sunglasses. They just don't need them, and they're seeing bright sun all day long.
And so, how does this fit in? I know without diversifying too much of this, we're obviously warned against too much sun exposure, harmful UV rays damaging the skin, potentially leading to skin cancer. Where does all this fit in? I mean, I know you're not saying we need to go and cake ourselves in oil and go and sit out in the sun. But for people that are hearing this and thinking, actually, I don't know if I want to go out and have exposure to the sun.
Well, I mean, to be honest, Rob, I think, I'm not a fan of sunglasses. I'm not a fan of this slip, slap, slop idea.
Yeah.
I think the way we currently use the sun is not very helpful. But all the data that I've seen, looking through the science of this, is that sun is actually beneficial and not a curse.
Okay.
People who get regular sun exposure people who use sunbeds, you can see the sunbed behind me. People who use sunbeds, that's mostly UVB, that one, UVB in red. But people who use sunbeds, even just normal tanning salon beds, have a 20% lower all-cause mortality than people who don't.
Is that right?
That's right. But there is a problem with unsafe sun use. And unsafe sun use is spending 11 and a half months of the year covered in SPF creams and sunglasses, and then going to Spain in the middle of the hottest part of the year and trying to bake yourself all day long. Yeah. There is a problem with that.
Yes,
that's not sensible use of the sun.
So it's consistent exposure to the natural sunlight, but at the right times of the day.
Yes, and the reddening of your skin, Rob, it's called erythema. Now, erythema is a natural process that it's the body's saying to you, we've had enough vitamin D production for today, thanks.
Okay.
So then, get yourself under a tree, get yourself under a brolly.
Into some shade,
Take yourself away from it,
But preferably stay outside.
Yeah.
So if morning sun, getting that morning sun and
getting that morning sun into your eyes,
stimulating your eyes. Yeah.
That stimulates the brain and the gut to produce serotonin.
Okay, so the influence there into the gut bacteria and the hormones. Yeah,
absolutely. So increased serotonin, and then later in the day, once the sun starts going down, the darkness stimulates. If you've got a lot of serotonin floating about, one, you've been happier all day, but secondly, that serotonin can then be converted into melatonin.
Right. And how does that benefit?
So melatonin, melatonin's, it's probably, for me, the master kind of hormone in the body, antioxidant in the body. It's repair, regenerative. It's involved in, I haven't found a process it doesn't seem to be beneficial for at the moment.
And then obviously in respect to the virus at the moment, that's crucial, right? That's going to build up the defenses.
Absolutely. So I think the combination of reconnecting with the environment, do it very safely. Most people have gardens, but for those who don't, if you've got a balcony, or if you just time your walks, just to get the sun at morning light, midday, between 10 and 2, I think now we can get some UVB at northern latitudes, and then try in the house if you can. If you can't see the sunset, then try and create a sunset in your home. Right. And that tells the brain, right, it's time to produce melatonin now.
As in starting to dim the light, to switch down the blue screens.
Get rid of the technology. So we restrict TV use in the evenings.
Okay.
So if I'm going to watch TV, I'm probably going to watch it in the middle of the day.
Right.
Everyone's got a lot of time in their hands now. They're worried about what.
This is a very, very tough ask, Paul. You realise that when people are stuck indoors, self-isolated, possibly with kids running around, and now we're saying, okay, that whole idea of Netflix and chill, as people say, that's not a good thing.
That's not helpful. I don't think that's helpful. It might be helpful for short-term kind of getting through each day and peace of mind.
Sanity. It might be helpful for sanity.
But long term, I don't think it's helpful.
Yeah. No, I get that. It makes sense. So
another support for this, Rob, is we're seeing new statistics every day, and some of the statistics I've seen from America, places like Detroit that have something like a 15 or 20% Afro-American population. But the people who've died of COVID in Detroit, the African Americans, are more than 70% of that population.
Is that right? Okay.
So not a higher latitude than their skin is designed to live in, and then suddenly they can't get all the benefits of sunlight because they're not getting enough sunlight. Melanin, high melanin skin, it's blocking a lot of the UVB and a lot of the UV.
So the darker the skin, the more it blocks out that important UVB. So they need more exposure.
Yeah. And that probably points us towards something. And I've heard anecdotes from London as well of similar things, that the African Americans, the African English are a higher percentage than they represent in the total population.
Right.
So that kind of points to this idea, but then it points to the idea of what we call redox, mitochondrial redox.
Okay.
The effect of sunlight on making our mitochondria, the energy factories of our body, really healthy and efficient.
Okay. So just to clarify for people again, so the mitochondria within the cell is the, as you say, it's the energy producing part. Yes. Can you just explain a little bit about that, how that works?
So you've got these little kind of kidney shaped, most of them are kidney shaped kind of cells, and they live within our normal, pretty much every cell apart from red blood cells. And then on the inner membrane of these things, the inner membrane is very convoluted to make a lot of surface area. And you've got these little collections of proteins, and these proteins just pass electrons down this chain. And the ability of the proteins to pass electrons down is called our redox, our reduction oxidative potential.
So a bit like a current.
Current flows nicely down this, and if that current gets blocked up through underuse or overuse, then we start getting into difficulties. We start producing free radicals a lot, and you get DNA breaks, and
and you go back to then weakening your immune system.
Exactly.
So the redox potential, how's that related, as you say, to sunlight exposure? To what's your description for that then?
Well, so sunlight operates directly and indirectly on that system. So directly, the infrared light from the sun will stimulate some of those proteins to work in that chain directly. So they respond to the light. And it's why a lot of people now are using kind of near infrared lights for pain management and reducing inflammation and stuff. So that's a direct mechanism, and then indirectly through clocks, through water production, through just all kinds of kind of indirect
processes. What about the momentum behind? And I personally do this and have done for a while. And if I think back, I'm pretty sure it's off your recommendation, maybe even a couple of years ago. Cold showers.
Yeah.
So is this another stimulus for that redox?
Yeah, and we're learning quite a lot about quantum biology now. So the effects of quantum physics on biology, and
wow.
I can't go into too much detail here. One, because I don't understand it that well myself, but
I think it would be lost here as well, buddy.
Electron tunneling is a big thing in quantum mechanics, and we think that there's electron tunneling going on in the mitochondria in these proteins.
Actually within it, right?
Yeah. Now, electron tunneling is very dependent upon the space between. So there's a higher probability of that electron moving from there to there if they're very close together.
So rather than this wave kind of presentation to get more surface area,
that's still there. That's still
right.
There.
But you have a tunnel. You have like a super highway.
Yeah, doing cold can actually bring these proteins closer together and make the tunneling more effective.
Ah, wow. Okay.
And then secondly, cold showers, especially stimulating the sympathetic nervous system, cause an increase in the number of these protein chains.
Right.
And also they can do something called uncouple the proteins. So normally these energy factories are just doing that, they're producing energy.
Yeah.
But certainly people at northern latitudes, we can uncouple ours, and that allows our body to produce heat, so we don't produce ATP, we produce heat.
Okay, so uncoupling them isn't good.
No, uncoupling is very good for lifespan.
Right.
If you want to be a good athlete, uncoupling is bad.
Okay.
Because you're producing heat, you're not producing energy.
Right, got you.
So cold showers are involved in uncoupling. So what it means is uncoupling. We can produce an unlimited amount of heat without damaging ourselves, really, for normal people. And it means that electron flow is just nice and smooth, and then it's just being burnt off as heat at the end. Keep that flow going nicely.
So the very idea of having a cold shower, whatever time of year it is to forcibly bring about the body's ability to create heat.
Yes.
Yeah, and that process, as you say, is far more beneficial for us systemically than having a nice, cozy, warm shower.
Well, Rob, look, all we're using technology for is to just try and make life more comfortable, and our comfort zone's getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, and we have to have exactly the same temperature all year round, and we have to have exactly the same amount of sunlight all year round, and we have to have exactly the same TV programs all year round, and we have to have exactly the same food all year round. And that's not how we're designed to live. We're designed to live outdoors through the seasons.
Yes. Being
exposed to the cold and the warmer temperatures, getting washed in cold water. With our ancestors have had hot water to wash in.
And ultimately, in doing so, looking for these comforts constantly.
Yeah.
That, as you say, with all of this discussion, is what effectively weakens our immune system.
Absolutely.
And makes viral strains, whatever they might be, like the current one, far more damaging. Well, coupled with the globalization, the fact that they can spread so quickly.
If you look, Rob, if you look at which systems of the body have the most mitochondria, the immune system is one of the top 3.
Right.
So
says it all. Yeah.
Says it all. So if you've got broken mitochondria through not getting enough sunlight, through broken clocks, through not having exposures to extremes of temperature, then it's going to affect the immune system first.
Okay. So in a bid to help people, deal with the viral strains using their immune system as it was designed to do, are the suggestions to the lifestyle changes you're making, are they relating to optimizing your mitochondria? Is that essentially what it comes down to?
That's my opinion. Yeah.
So just to recap then, let's summarize what we're suggesting to do just that, to optimize the mitochondrial function in the body. We're looking at switching off the router towards the end of the day, dropping the tech. In turn, you're reducing your blue light exposure towards the end of the day, so we're not overstimulating the circadian clock, which then tells the body that we're constantly working when we're actually trying to wind down. We're then kind of waking up in the morning and potentially having a cold shower first and foremost, and then going outside into the morning sun.
That's why
without sunglasses. Getting that sunlight exposure into the eyes.
Our customers, we make bone broth, and our customers, I say to them, look, if you, most of them come to us with gut issues, and I say, if you want bone broth for your gut, you'll double the effect of bone broth if you go and sit outside in the morning sun and drink it in the morning sun.
Wow, that much?
Dead easy.
Okay, so the bone broth, that's another discussion right there. We'll come back to that one. We can't truck that one into the pot right now, but
the point I'm making, Rob, is build routines.
Yes.
Routine building.
Absolutely. I wrote a blog just recently, and the number one thing on these top 10 tips for working from home for people during this pandemic was to try and maintain some form of routine. Which makes sense. You're coming back to, again, the circadian clock, and we don't want much disruption, if any, to that, because that's the first impact, right? As the immune system's going to be affected. Okay, so we've got the sunlight in the morning, as much as you can through the day and the afternoon. If you can time that option to go and do your daily exercise, to leave the safety of your home to go and get sunlight exposure, then that's the best time to do it.
And but there's an add-on to that, Rob, that I've just I've been outside to do our shopping today, and the amount of people who are walking up with long sleeve tops and long trousers and sunglasses on is absolutely incredible. So get skin in the game.
Okay, so skin exposure, particularly
skin exposure for increasing vitamin D. Skin exposure it's not negotiable.
So nudity in your garden is absolutely fine.
Absolutely.
Within reason. Okay, brilliant. Well, I'll run through a little bullet point summary of this at the end of the video, just for the benefit of anyone that's watching it. So we've got a summary, as I say, of the ideas, the theory behind helping the immune system in this situation. I think that would be really beneficial. But thank you so much. Thank you for your time. Thank you for passing on your wisdom and knowledge in a time like this. I know loads of people that are going to be really interested to hear what you have to say about it, and hopefully, following those guidelines, we can all see through to the end of this viral strain, and perhaps be better prepared for anything else in the future. Was there anything else you wanted to add to this, Paul?
No, I think trying to take the strain off the NHS. I'm not trying to tell people to ignore the government guidelines. I'm trying to say follow the guidelines, but also you need to maximise your own immune system. So keep social distancing, wear masks where possible, and hand washing. Wash your hands regularly, and then moisturise as well. Don't allow your hands to dry and crack, because that's cracks
breaking the barrier, right?
Yeah, exactly, breaking that barrier down. You want a good, healthy kind of bacterial colonies on your hands as well for health.
Okay, interesting. So the interesting point here, the bacteria, because we spoke about this before, but the bacteria colony on your hands. Obviously there was loads of emphasis on hand sanitization. Use the alcohol gel as and when you can. Wash your hands. Finally, then, what's your take on that? What would you suggest?
Just wash your hands with normal soap and water.
Right. Okay. No need for the antibacterial type.
I mean, if you can't get anything else, the antibacterial as kind of hand sanitizers will do at a push, but they're not perfect, and they can make situations slightly worse.
In what way?
Well, so the data that I think I sent you the paper on that, Rob, was that you know, once the kind of the mucus is dry on your hands with the bacteria or the virus in, then the sanitizers work okay, but they don't work on wet. They become like almost like a virus glue.
Okay, so it'll stick to it.
So they stick to it, and they keep it wet and moist, and they don't allow the kind of killing to happen. So just using plain soap and water that breaks down the lipid membrane of the virus is absolutely the best thing you can do. And
then, as you say,
it leaves the host bacteria generally intact.
Follow up with some kind of moisturizer just to help repair the dryness that that creates.
Yeah.
And I'm aware that you also make a skin moisturizer as well. The byproduct of bone broth production.
Well, I mean, yeah. So, I mean, we make tallow-based, a kind of beef tallow-based balm, and the reason we do that is because it's the closest thing to human sebum in terms of fatty acid profile. So, it's as soon as you put it on and it sinks in, your hands are back to normal again. They're nice and soft. It's
magic stuff. We've used it. I've said to you before. We've used it. Our kids have used it, and it's incredible. Brilliant stuff.
Thanks.
Right, Paul. Well, thank you very much. Again, I really appreciate that. We'll get the word out there to help other people understand this a bit better, hopefully. And we'll perhaps, we'll get back in touch and we'll have a discussion on something else in the future. So thank you. Thank you for your time, mate.
Brilliant.
Take care, won't you?
Yeah, stay safe, mate.
Cheers, buddy.
Thanks, mate. Bye.